Okay, this lesson is for Thursday, February 16th, 2012. Today we're going to be conducting an optics lab on reflection and refraction. As you walk in the room, you'll notice that there are two handouts for you. One is a two-sided graph paper, and another one is the actual directions for the procedure for the lab. So you want to make sure that you got both of those as you walked in. Let's go ahead and take a look at the lab that we're going to be doing today in class. Okay, so at the top it says optics and images, and we are going to be investigating how images are formed by light. At each table there's a light and optics kit. We are going to be working with the lasers, the mirrors, and the larger lens on the table. You'll get to see an example of each of those in the procedure that we're about to go over. We're going to have the room a little bit darker so you can see the laser a little bit better. You're going to have access to a ruler and an index card. Okay, so at each table we've got this setup here that we're going to be using. In the first part of the lab you're going to be using the mirror, and you're going to draw an image. It can be whatever image you want as long as it's obviously within tasteful means. And once you've drawn that image, you're going to go ahead and use the mirror. You'll put it up against it. We're going to be using the laser to actually generate that image on the graph paper where it would show up. And to do that, it's very simple. We just go ahead and draw a line where our mirror was at. So we draw a line where the mirror is at. Again, we should use pencil here in case you make any mistakes. You'll have your object, and we're going to be using the laser. We're going to pick a point on our object. In this case, they picked the point of the arrow, and they're going to shoot the laser so it goes through that point. Now you can use your index card to see where that laser is actually at, and where it's at you follow that index card down, you make a point, and that'll allow you to draw the lines representing the incident ray and the reflected ray. So what that ends up looking like right over here, you'll see that after you take off the mirror and you're looking at your graph paper, you'll have a line where the mirror was at. You can see that they've actually drawn two lines. So they've drawn 2 points where the laser was at, and I'll show you the reason for that in just a minute. So this is one of the lasers, this is the second one, and then where they bounced off, they've drawn those lines as well. Now these reflected rays where they bounced off, we're going to follow those right on through. You can see they've shown that with a dotted line here, but you can follow them right on through. Just put a sheet of paper up to make sure you get a straight line. And where these two lines meet is going to be where the tip of the arrow is on this side, where it would have shown up on the mirror. So you're just going to draw your new mirror image on this side using the laser to help you find where it would show up on the other side of the mirror. Okay, so that's going to be the first part of the lab that you're doing today. The second part of the lab is to use one of the flat lenses. It's the larger lens, and you're going to place that on your board with the laser towards the very end. Now you're going to have to play with this a little bit depending on where, depending on how big your graph paper is. You might have to start this lens a little bit closer to the laser when you're doing this. So it says to align and mark the beam. You want to go ahead and do that and draw a line right through it using your pencil. It says to move the laser in a line at a lower grid line, so just move it a little bit lower and do the same thing. And then you can do it at a higher grid line, same thing. And each time that happens, you need to go ahead and mark where the beam is coming out. Okay. Now where those beams all converge, that's going to be your focal point. And the focal length for the lens is actually from the center of the lens to that focal point. When you finish both of those, you're going to have to make sure you finish the questions that come with them. So make sure you finish those questions right over here at the bottom. You'll turn that in along with the graph paper on the front and back completed. So on one side of your graph paper you should have this reflected object where you've drawn the lines for the laser and where the reflected object would be, and then on the other side you should have this refraction where you're showing the lens and what the focal point and focal length are for that lens, given 3 different beams that have been identified. Okay, when you're done with those, you'll go ahead and turn it in. I'd like to remind you also that you have a light quiz that you're taking on Friday. It's going to be mainly conceptual. We didn't get a lot of time to do labs given all the stuff that's been going on with robotics. So it's just going to be really important that you review all the online textbook stuff that we went over from Cinch Science. And if you need to make sure you get that password before you leave, I'd be happy to give it to you so you can review for that quiz.